On the 6th of May 1964, a supermarket worker in Aberdeen, Scotland, opened a tin of corned beef and began slicing the meat and placing it in a window display for sale. It was an ordinary day at the beginning of the busy summer season, and nothing about the tin or the meat seemed amiss. Within weeks, however, this single tin would have turned life in Aberdeen upside down, ended several lives, and caused a wave of sickness that affected nearly 600 people. The brand, Fray Bentos, has sold meat products in the UK since 1873, and throughout the 1900s the company maintained a close relationship with the UK's armed forces. It first supplied British troops in the Second Boer War. Their tins of corned beef were so popular with British troops that by the start of World War I, many soldiers used the term Fray Bentos as slang to indicate when something was especially good. The company profited hugely from serving British armed forces during conflicts, and by World War II, the Fray Bentos brand had moved its production facilities to Argentina in order to expand production. This period was the company's peak. Factory operations grew to involve around 5,000 workers who would process 400 cows per hour to meet wartime demand. The move to Argentina presented no issues as far as the availability of beef was concerned. However, South America was home to several strains of typhoid. During production, the factory sterilized its cans of meat at high temperatures and used water from local rivers to cool them. Regulation at the time didn't require the water used for cooling to be chlorinated, and since the factory didn't test the content of the cans once cooled, it had no way of knowing if its products were free of contaminants from the river water. The UK had experienced several outbreaks of typhoid fever between 1929 and 1948. Most of these cases arose from contaminated canned beef, usually from a producer based in Argentina. Despite this, corned beef remained a staple of UK households following the end of the Second World War. Its long shelf life, low price point, and role in keeping the nation fed meant that British citizens were eager buyers of Fray Bentos products. One city where these products were popular was Aberdeen in northeast Scotland. Aberdeen was known for its buildings constructed from a local surplus of granite, the nearby shores where dolphins and sharks could sometimes be spotted, and its many sites of historical significance. With all of these things attracting tourists to the area, the summer season was often a busy one. In 1963, there had been 3 small outbreaks of typhoid in the UK, with the common factor being they all involved corned beef from Argentina. These were among a total of 11 typhoid outbreaks in 34 years, arising from Argentinian corned beef. Despite the risks associated with meat from the region, the Minister for Health, Enoch Powell, refused to ban imports of Argentinian-made canned beef into the UK. As such, Fray Bentos corned beef, shipped from Argentina, was still on sale in the UK in the summer of 1964, as the tourist season began in Aberdeen. On the 6th of May 1964, staff at a branch of William Lowe, a Scottish supermarket chain, opened a 2.7 kilogram or 6-pound tin of Fray Bentos corned beef. This particular tin lasted for 3 days, with the meat stored in an unrefrigerated display window and exposed to natural sunlight throughout. Unwittingly, by storing the meat in this manner, staff had created a perfect, warm, airy breeding ground for bacteria. This corned beef was sliced into smaller portions for sale using the store's cutting machine. The staff went on to use the same machine to slice other cold meats without sanitizing the blade. The first reports of illness came just a week later. 2 patients fell ill on the 12th of May, were admitted to Aberdeen's City Hospital on the 16th of May, and upon examination of a blood sample, tested positive for typhoid on the 20th of May, just 14 days after they had purchased the tainted beef. The fact that multiple typhoid cases had been found in Aberdeen made headlines within days. Typhoid fever is highly contagious and can cause life-threatening complications if not treated. With Aberdeen set for a busy summer tourist season, the UK's National Health Service, the NHS, went to work to find the source and stop the disease spreading before a panic could take hold. By the 23rd of May, people in Aberdeen had fallen sick in their dozens. Among the victims was 16-year-old Sheena Blackhall. She later described how her family doctor recognized the symptoms of typhoid fever straight away from his experience with the disease in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. Sufferers of typhoid can expect a high fever and headaches so bad that the patient becomes delusional. In a recent interview, a survivor from the 1964 outbreak recalled mistaking ambulance staff for seagulls trying to attack her while she lay on a stretcher. In response to the outbreak, schools were closed, people isolated themselves, and a culture of mistrust and suspicion spread throughout what was usually a close-knit and friendly community. Survivors reported that milkmen refused to approach the doors of families that were known to be infected, and recall being told to remain indoors and not to leave Aberdeen without good reason by City Medical Officer Dr. Ian McQueen. Hospitalised patients recall a surreal experience. NHS staff and first responders provided excellent care, but with some patients suffering from delusions, others responding badly to the massive doses of antibiotics they were treated with, and nobody sure of the source of the illness, many experienced a chaotic atmosphere within hospitals and medical facilities. The impact of the outbreak went beyond the infected and their families. Local business was badly affected, forever transforming Aberdeen's high street. Sheena Blackhall's father, for example, was a manager at a local bus company. Many visitors cancelled their tickets once word spread that his daughter had caught typhoid, and almost all income from tourism disappeared. The bus company would close its doors for good a year later, a fate that was shared by many other small businesses such as restaurants and hotels in the city. The media coverage of the outbreak sometimes served to heighten anxieties. One Spanish newspaper reported that the streets of Aberdeen are littered with rotting corpses waiting to be thrown into the sea. Frightened travellers avoided the north of Scotland, and Aberdonians who wished to travel out of the city often saw their bookings refused. While panic spread among the general population, authorities searched for the source of the outbreak. By the 23rd of May, it was found that at least 38 of 41 typhoid patients had consumed cold meat from the William Lowe supermarket. Shortly after, a public health laboratory in Colindale concluded that the strain of typhoid bacteria at large in Aberdeen was common in South America and Spain, but unknown in the UK. Finally, by the 26th of May, investigators had determined that the outbreak stemmed from a single tin of Fray Bentos corned beef, which was sold in slices between the 6th and the 9th of May. The Government Health and Welfare Department took steps to temporarily close and sanitize the entire store. Further investigation revealed that none of the staff were carriers of the deadly bacteria. The outbreak had not come from a staff member. For local health authorities, this was excellent news, since they could trace every case of typhoid fever to the meat counter at the supermarket. Investigators were confident that they'd isolated the source of the outbreak. Now all that remained was to contain the spread of the disease and treat the infected. By this point, at least 238 people had contracted typhoid fever, with several patients in critical condition. To limit further spread, a public health campaign around food hygiene and hand washing was launched, with the government encouraging residents to take measures to ensure their own safety. Hospital admissions continued to rise, peaking at 32 per day. Responders quarantined 507 people in the City and Tornadee hospitals during the outbreak. Of the infected, 391 people reported eating food from the William Lowe store, with 373 eating cold meats. Miraculously, only 3 people died because of complications of typhoid, but most patients were ill for as long as 4 weeks. Despite cases of infection beginning to fall from the 6th of June onwards, the city was declared all clear of typhoid by the 17th, the outbreak would have lasting consequences for Aberdeen. Paranoia about visiting the city or entertaining guests from Aberdeen remained, and it took a visit from the Queen to restore confidence in Aberdeen as a safe place to work and visit. The William Lowe supermarket would continue trading across northern England and Scotland for another 30 years. However, its Aberdeen branch was never successful again and shut down in 1967. Many small and family-owned businesses also didn't survive, and it was many years before tourism returned to normal levels. An investigation headed by Sir David Milne exposed multiple serious health issues connected with the sale of Argentine canned beef. In particular, the use of unchlorinated water in its production presented a significant threat to public health. The water used by the Fray Bentos company was river water, drawn from a river into which tons of human excrement and urine was flushed on a daily basis. This water had entered the can that caused the outbreak through a microscopic hole, leading to its infection with typhoid bacteria. Investigators also noted the need for basic hygiene and sanitation training for food handlers. Although the staff at the William Lowe supermarket could not have known that the can was infected, safer food handling procedures might have limited the spread of the disease. However, recommendations for new food handling laws were not put into effect after the outbreak was over. 14 of the recommended interventions in Sir Milne's report were completely overlooked for more than 30 years. In 1996, an E. coli outbreak caused by almost identical circumstances resulted in 20 deaths and 496 people taken ill in the Scottish town of Wishaw. The source was a butcher selling cold meats. The report produced in the aftermath of this tragedy was compared with the report produced in the aftermath of the Aberdeen typhoid outbreak. Many of the recommendations were identical. For example, both reports recommended mandatory basic training for anyone handling food as part of a business in the UK. In 1996, decades after this measure had first been recommended, it was finally made law. The UK's food handling legislation was further strengthened with regular inspections for food handling businesses and mandatory registration with local authorities. Due to these changes, contamination accidents on the scale of the Aberdeen typhoid outbreak of 1964 are almost unheard of today. Corned beef and other tinned meats can now be consumed with a high degree of confidence that they have been manufactured, transported, and prepared with safety in mind.